Hello everyone, and welcome to Hangout for Hope, your spiritual pick-me-up that's just the right amount of time for this moment in time. I welcome you tonight and hope that you'll join me right here and other places over the next few weeks as we explore things like last week, like the Advent wreath, tonight, like the Christmas tree, and a lot of other Christmas traditions in the Christmas cycle. The Christmas cycle is comprised of the seasons of Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany. I am right now coming to you on location in my family's neighborhood here in Columbus, Ohio. This is not my house behind me. This is very well decorated, and while my family did a great job with our house, the other day my family and we were on a walk looking at Christmas lights, and we saw this one and said, wow, wouldn't that be a great backdrop to have for this episode of Hangout for Hope? So we've always looked for light in dark places, haven't we? That longing, searching, appreciation for light that has always been with us. It is in the Bible. And in the Bible, light has a very important role. In fact, right out of the gate in Book 1, Chapter 1, starting with verse 1, remember how the Bible begins? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Then there's what we're actually going to read this upcoming Sunday from the Gospel of John, talking about light. The Gospel of John begins, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it." And that comes from John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. And then finally tonight, we have 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6. For God said, "Let light shine out of darkness." Let light shine out of darkness. You know, maybe I'll give you one more verse. Philippians chapter 2. "Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like the stars in the universe, as you hold out the world of life, in order that I may boast on the day that Christ and I did not run or labor for nothing." So, my friends, Jesus came as the light of the world. Yes, that light exposes sin, but it also shines truth. God does not wish for us to walk around stumbling through darkness, and God gave us the light, Jesus, to follow in this life. Now, honestly, when I think of Christmas lights, my mind automatically goes to the scene from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. But before we get to the electrifying feats of light, like the one behind me, before we get to the LEDs, let's start off with a flicker. There are many different reasons why candles are associated with Christmas, although no one really knows when they first became connected. They were used during the ancient winter solstice celebrations as a way of remembering that spring would come soon. One of the earliest records of candles being used at Christmas is actually from the Middle Ages, where a large candle was used to represent the Star of Bethlehem. Jesus is sometimes called the light of the world by us Christians. And you can see how all of the things that went into candles and light with Advent wreath and Advent candles in last week's episode. Candles are also used during Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of light, which is also celebrated during winter. During the 8 nights of Hanukkah, a candle is lit in a special menorah in progression as the days pass. Candles are also used in the modern winter festival of Kwanzaa, where a very special candle holder called a kinara that holds 7 candles is used. Perhaps the most famous use of candles at Christmas are the carols by candlelight during candlelight Christmas Eve services. These are the services in which the church is only lit by candles, and at Advent we have a tradition of singing Silent Night. In some parts of Ireland, it was a tradition to have a Yule candle instead of a Yule log. And finally, in southern India, Christians often put a small burning clay lamps on their flat roofs of their homes to celebrate Christmas. Oh, and one more thing, Christians in China use paper lanterns to decorate their Christmas trees. Candles are also used as a part of St. Lucia or St. Lucy's Day celebrations all the way over in Sweden. But of course, as many of us think of candles and Christmas, candles were also originally used to decorate, can you believe this, Christmas trees, until safer electric lights were invented. Now, at this point, I got a break, and before we get to the electric Christmas tree lights, let's hang on to the matter of Christmas trees just for a moment. Let's talk about Christmas trees. Now I'm inside my home with our family Christmas tree. The evergreen fir tree has traditionally been used to celebrate winter festivals like pagan and Christian both for thousands of years. Pagans used to decorate branches of their trees in their homes during the winter solstice, as it made them think of the springtime to come. The Romans used fir trees to decorate their temples at the festival of Saturn. Christians used it as a sign of everlasting life with God. Nobody's really sure when fir trees were first used as Christmas trees. It probably began about 1,000 years ago in Northern Europe. Many early Christmas trees seem to have been hung upside down from the ceiling using chains, hung from things like chandeliers and lighting hooks and things like that. It's a true story. Other early Christmas trees across many parts of Northern Europe were cherry or hawthorn plants, or a branch of the plant, that were put into pots and brought inside so they would hopefully flower at Christmas time. If you couldn't afford a real plant, people made pyramids of woods, and they were decorated to look like a tree with paper, apples, and candles. Sometimes they were carried around from house to house rather than being displayed in a home. It's possible that the wooden pyramid trees were meant to be like paradise trees. These were used in medieval Germany mystery or miracle plays that were acted out in front of churches on Christmas Eve. In the early church, the calendars of the saints, December 24th was actually observed as Adam and Eve's Day. The paradise tree represented the Garden of Eden. It was often paraded around the town before the play started as a way of advertising the play. The plays told Bible stories to people who couldn't read. The first documented use of a Christmas tree and New Year celebrations is argued between the cities of Tallinn in Estonia and Riga in Latvia. Both claim that they had the first trees, Tallinn in 1441 and Riga in 1510. Both trees were put up by the Brotherhood of Blackheads, which is an association of unmarried merchants, ship owners, and foreigners in what is now Estonia and Latvia. Little is known about either tree apart from the fact that they were in the town square They were danced around by the Brotherhood of Blackheads and were then set on fire. This was the custom of the Yule log. The word used for tree could also mean a mast or pole. You know, a tree might have been like a paradise tree in that kind of wooden tree-shaped candelabra rather than a real tree. One thing we do know is that this is not the origin of Seinfeld's Festivus, if you know what I mean.
Happy Festivus? What is Festivus?
It's nothing. It's nothing.
When George was growing
Jerry,
up,
no.
his father hated all the commercial and religious aspects of Christmas, so he made up his own holiday.
Oh, and another piece of the puzzle falls into place.
All right.
And instead of a tree, didn't your father put up an aluminum pole?
Jerry, stop it.
The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're gonna hear about it.
Frank, no offense, but this holiday's a little out there.
A picture from Germany in 1521 shows a tree being paraded through the streets with a man riding a horse behind it. The man is dressed as a bishop, probably representing St. Nicholas. There's a record of a small tree in Bremen, Germany from 1570. It is described as a tree decorated with apples, nuts, dates, pretzels, and paper flowers. It was displayed in a guild house, the meeting place for a society of businessmen and in the city. The first person to bring a Christmas tree into the house in the way that we know it today may have been that 16th century German preacher and Lutheran favorite, Martin Luther. A story is told that one night before Christmas, he was walking through the forest, looked up to see the stars shining through the tree branches. It was so beautiful that he went home and told his children that it reminded him of Jesus, who left the stars of heaven to come to earth at Christmas. In Germany, in the early mid to 1800s, it was also fashionable to have a forest scene or a nativity scene under the trees, especially if the trees were placed on tables. And so these scenes also stood on the tree carpets. But it was in the 1860s where proper metal tree holders for cut trees began to be made. If you were rich, you could get them in very fancy shapes, and some of them even had music boxes in them, so you could literally play Christmas tunes by the thing that was holding your Christmas tree up. Less expensive tree holders also became available and were made out of cheaper metals, and they also didn't look so good. So the smaller carpets became smaller, and they were put around the tree holders and became Christmas tree skirts that we have in our homes today. And finally, artificial Christmas trees really started becoming popular in the early 20th century. In the Edwardian period, Christmas trees made from colored ostrich feathers were popular and quite fashionable at parties. Around 1900, there was even a short fashion for white trees. So if you thought colored trees are a new invention, guess what? They're not. Over the years, artificial trees have been made from things like paper mache, feathers, metal, glass, and many different types of plastic. The tallest artificial tree was 170.6 feet high, and it was covered in green PVC leaves. Whew, I'd hate to have to decorate that one. But now, back to Christmas lights. This is really an interesting story. Back in 1882, in a townhouse at 136 East 36th Street in New York City, a guy named Edward Hibbert Johnson had the idea that would make him the unsung set decorator of zillions of holiday snapshots. Fronted by a luxurious mustache, his loyal lieutenant to Thomas Edison was the embodiment of this era. He was part engineer, part businessman, part Barnum and Bailey. In 1871, Johnson hired Edison, then a 24-year-old inventor, as a consultant. And Edison, quote, ate at his desk and slept in his chair. True story. Johnson later recalled these facts, and in fact, he said in 6 weeks he had gone through books, written a volume 2 of abstracts, and made 2,000 experiments and produced one solution. So impressed was Johnson that when Edison left to start a new company, he followed, quickly making himself useful, turning Edison's brainstorms into cash. In 1877, after Edison invented the phonograph, Johnson took the machine on tour, charging crowds to drum up excitement. When Edison patented the light bulb in 1880, its exact value was kind of hard to gauge because electricity really wasn't widespread then. Still, Johnson and Edison and other inventors invested $35,000 into the Edison Lamp Company to sell bulbs. Before long, Johnson had a bright idea. We tend to think of the Christmas season traditions as ancient, but actually most of them were born from the 19th century. A Visit from St. Nicholas was published in 1823, and A Christmas Carol was published in 1843. Thomas Nast's drawing of Jolly Santa Claus debuted in 1862. Meanwhile, in 1841, Queen Victoria's husband, Albert, had introduced Britain to O Tannenbaum, the Christmas tree. And the idea became spread. In fact, in the United States, President Franklin Pierce put up at the White House in 1856, and by the 1870s, fresh-cut trees were being sold at Washington Square Park and pretty ornaments at Macy's. But what really made a Christmas tree were the candles. And while their flickering flames were festive, they were also, as you can imagine, a fire hazard. So over at the Edison shop, Johnson saw an opportunity. Setting up a tree by the street side window of his parlor, Johnson hand-wired 80 red, white, and blue bulbs and strung them all together all around the tree, placed the trunk on a revolving pedestal powered by a generator. Then he called a reporter. At the rear of the beautiful parlors was a Christmas tree presenting a most picturesque and uncanny aspect. He writes, "It was brilliantly lighted with 80 lights in all encased in these dainty glass eggs and about equally divided between red, white, and blue. One can hardly imagine anything prettier." The lights drew a crowd as passers-by stopped to peer at the glowing marvel. Johnson turned his stunt into a tradition and also pioneered the practice of doing more each year. An 1884 New York Times article counted 120 bulbs on his dazzling tree. Johnson's lights were indeed ahead of their time because electricity, again, wasn't routinely available, and honestly, this wasn't cheap. A string of 16 flame-shaped bulbs sizing in brass sockets the size of shot glasses sold for a pricey $12, which is about $350 in today's money. But in 1894, President Cleveland put electric lights up in the White House tree, and by 1914, a 16-foot strand just cost $1.75. In the 30s, colored bulbs and cones were everywhere. Today, an estimated 150 million sets of lights are sold in America each year, adding to the tangled millions stuffed into boxes in January. They light 80 million homes and actually consume 6% of the nation's electrical load each December. And though the contagious joy of Christmas lights has been co-opted into the orange of Halloween and the red of Valentine's Day, it all started with Johnson's miracle on 36th Street. Oh, and by the way, this December 21st, just after sunset for a short time, meteorologists and astronomers tell us that we will get the opportunity to witness another marvel of light as we will experience a Christmas star, an enormously bright celestial event that hasn't occurred in hundreds of years, not since the year 1226. For the star to shine as brightly as it will on December 21st, Jupiter and Saturn will need to align only by 0.1 degree. The image will appear as one star. Scientists tell us that the planets won't align this closely again until the year 7541. and you can only see it for about a half hour after sunset. So make sure you get those telescopes and those binoculars ready. The Christmas star is coming. And I'm glad it is, because it's generated some real tangible excitement. For some, it's the thrill of seeing something rare and new, something wondrous that one hasn't witnessed for thousands of years. For many, that light is a sign of hope in the world that things are going to get better. Light for us signals something inside us that triggers joy and hope and even faith. You know, my friends, I know that this is a lot of information, and I hope that you found it interesting. Lights are wondrous and welcome sights as we journey in these dark days, both literally and metaphorically. They remind us of hope and life. They provide us with a visual sign of God's truth, that light shines in the darkness and the darkness did not overcome it. Jesus is the light of the world. May Christ shine bright in your life today and in every tomorrow. Well, that's it for Hangout for Hope tonight. I hope that you've enjoyed hanging out with me and learning a little bit about the season of Advent and Christmas and lights and Christmas trees. Next week, we're going to have some more things to learn about. Now, just so you know, I love this time of Advent, and I also love Advent as a place. Advent Lutheran Church is in Columbus, Ohio, where I serve as pastor. And it's a great place to worship God, follow Jesus, serve others, and make disciples. For more information about Advent and the ways to worship with us, just go to adventelc.org or see us on our social media platforms at @AdventELC. So, until next week, I'm Pastor Aaron Lane, wishing you a blessed Advent season and reminding you to take care and to give care in the name of the one from whom all blessings flow. Have a great rest of your week.